The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Plain white envelope, no return address, postmarked from a town I didn't recognize 300 miles south. My name scrawled in handwriting I knew better than my own. My grandmother's distinctive cursive, with its dramatic loops and precise angles. I stared at it, coffee forgotten in my hand, as the impossible truth settled over me like a shroud. My grandmother had been dead for 3 years. I'd grieved her. We all had. The funeral had been small, closed casket due to the alleged severity of her injuries from the car accident. My father, her only son, had been inconsolable. He'd worshipped his mother even when she was difficult, even when she demanded too much. My aunt had handled the arrangements, telling us through tears that Grandma had left specific instructions. We hadn't questioned it. With trembling fingers, I tore open the envelope. My dearest Michael, if you're reading this, I'm truly gone this time. Not like before. I know what I did was unforgivable. I know the pain I caused. There are things you need to understand, things I couldn't tell anyone until now. Come to the old house. The key is where it always was, under the ceramic frog by the back door. Everything will make sense. Please come alone. I've always loved you most. Abuela. I called in sick to work, threw a change of clothes into my car and drove the 4 hours to my grandmother's house without telling anyone. The rational part of my brain screamed that this was impossible, that I was falling for a cruel joke. But I recognized her handwriting. I recognized the faint scent of rose water that still clung to the paper. And she had called herself Abuela, the name only I used for her, a private connection from the years she'd taught me Spanish. The house looked exactly as it had 3 years ago, white clapboard siding, green shutters that needed repainting. The massive oak tree in the front yard with its tire swing still hanging from the lowest branch. According to the family, it had been sold after her death, the proceeds divided between my father and aunt. But here it was, undisturbed, as though waiting. The ceramic frog was still there, weathered but intact, and beneath it, just as the letter promised, was the key. Inside, the house smelled of dust and disuse, but underneath was the familiar scent of cinnamon and coffee that had always perfumed my grandmother's home. There were sheets over the furniture, but it was all there. Her reading chair, the old television, the collection of porcelain dolls that had terrified me as a child. On the mantel were our family photos, including ones taken just before her death. "Hello?" my voice echoed. No response. In the kitchen, I found another envelope propped against a dusty fruit bowl. My name again. Inside was a handwritten confession that sent me reeling to the nearest chair. 3 years ago, my grandmother had faked her own death. She had paid a funeral director to lie, had convinced my aunt to help with the arrangements, had provided a body that wasn't hers. All to disappear with Victor Salazar, a wealthy investor she'd met at her church group. A man 20 years her junior who had showered her with attention and promises of adventure in her final years. "I was 68, Michael," she wrote. "I'd spent my life caring for everyone else. Your grandfather worked himself to death. Your father demanded my time even as an adult. I'd never known passion or freedom. Victor offered me both. It was selfish, it was cruel. But I took his hand and disappeared." The letter detailed their travels, coastal Mexico, Argentina, Spain. How for 2 glorious years she had lived the life she'd always dreamed of. And then Victor's true nature emerged. His investments collapsed. His creditors came calling. He began drinking, then gambling away what remained of their money. He became cruel, then desperate. He took everything, she wrote. The money I'd gotten from selling the house, which wasn't sold at all, just transferred to a shell company he controlled. My jewelry, even my wedding ring from your grandfather. Then one night in Madrid, he simply didn't come back to our hotel. She'd been left penniless in a foreign country, too ashamed to reach out to family she had betrayed. It had taken her nearly a year to make her way back, working odd jobs, accepting charity from strangers, slowly making her way home to a house she technically no longer owned, but that sat empty due to irregularities in Victor's paperwork. I've been living here as a ghost in my own life for 3 months, the letter continued. The bank will repossess the house next week. I have cancer, the real kind, not the fake illness I once used as an excuse to avoid family gatherings. I won't see the summer. Before I go, I needed one person to know the truth. I chose you because you always saw me clearly, even my flaws. I don't expect forgiveness. I sat in that kitchen until sunset, the letter crushed in my hands, tears streaming down my face. Grief, rage, and confusion battled inside me. Part of me wanted to call my father immediately to expose the elaborate deception. Another part recognized the raw humanity in my grandmother's terrible choice, the desperate grab for joy after a life of duty. As the light faded, I heard a key in the lock, footsteps, the sound of grocery bags being set down. Michael. Her voice was thinner than I remembered, but unmistakable. You came. My grandmother stood in the doorway, visibly aged beyond her 71 years. Her once black hair completely white now, her proud posture diminished by a slight stoop. Her eyes, the same deep brown as mine, filled with tears as they met mine. Abuela, I whispered, not knowing if I should embrace her or condemn her. What have you done? Chapter 2. The Cost of Truth. The kettle whistled, a high-pitched scream that matched the tension in the room. My grandmother's hands trembled as she poured hot water into 2 chipped mugs. Tea bags bobbed to the surface, chamomile, the same kind she'd made whenever I was upset as a child. Some habits don't die, even when the person was supposed to have. Victor took everything, she said quietly, sliding a mug toward me across the kitchen table. Not just the money, my dignity, my sense of self. She touched her left cheekbone where a faint yellowish bruise was still healing. Some prices are higher than others. I hadn't touched my tea. You let us bury an empty casket, Abuela. Dad cried for months. He still visits your grave every Sunday. Her face crumpled. I know. I received the letters you all left at the cemetery. The groundskeeper, he was Victor's cousin, part of the plan. He sent them to me. The rage that had been simmering erupted. Part of the plan. Do you have any idea? I stood up so violently the chair clattered to the floor. I had nightmares for months. I imagined your body broken in that accident, your face. I couldn't continue. The grief felt fresh, even with her sitting before me. I never meant for it to last this long, she whispered. At first, it was supposed to be a few months. Time to settle affairs with Victor in Argentina, then stage a miracle. We found out I hadn't actually died, just had amnesia, was living in some remote village. She waved her hand dismissively. But then Victor kept pushing it back, said it was too complicated to undo. Eventually, I realized he never intended to let me return. I paced the kitchen, processing. So what now? You're dying for real, so suddenly you want forgiveness? You want us to welcome you back with open arms? No, she said firmly, meeting my gaze. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I want to make amends as much as possible, and she hesitated. I need your help, Michael. The house is being repossessed next week. I have nowhere to go. I laughed bitterly. And Dad's house has an extra bedroom, is that it? No. She pulled out another envelope from her cardigan pocket. I've written everything down. The truth, all of it. Every detail of the deception, who helped, who knew. Victor's real identity. He's wanted in 3 countries for investment fraud. Proof that the death certificate was falsified. She slid it toward me. Do with it what you will. Tell your father. Go to the police. Let the world know what a foolish, selfish old woman I am. I stared at the envelope but didn't touch it. The cancer is real, she continued. Pancreatic stage 4. I've got 2 months, maybe 3. The pain is... She winced, shifting in her seat. I don't want to die alone, Michael, not in some state facility, but I'll understand if that's what you choose for me. The silence stretched between us, filled with 3 years of lies and a lifetime of complicated love. Why did you really do it? I finally asked. The whole truth. She looked out the window at the darkening sky. Your grandfather controlled every aspect of my life for 43 years. When he died, your father expected me to transfer that same devotion to him and his family. I was a cooking, cleaning, babysitting machine with no identity outside of serving others. Her eyes flashed with a familiar stubbornness. Victor saw me as a woman, not just a grandmother. He made me feel alive. Despite everything I understood, my grandfather had been a cold, demanding man. My father, though I loved him, had inherited that entitled attitude toward the women in his life. What was real? I asked quietly. From my childhood, was any of it genuine? Tears spilled down her wrinkled cheeks. Everything with you was real, every story, every lesson, every moment. You were the one person I never had to pretend with.